French innovation is wider and broader than most people realise. The Musée des Arts et Metiers, or in English, the Museum of Arts and Crafts, is located in Paris, France, in 60 Rue Ria. Hello again, everybody. Even though I have a love for museums, I have a greater love of food. And the best pizza I've ever had in my life was at Valdara, a restaurant only 160 meters away from Musée des Arts et Metiers. If you visit the museum, I strongly recommend you stop there and have a pizza. We had one on the way in and one on the way out. That's what we thought of it. And if ever I go to Paris again, I will be visiting them. I understand they have a chain of about 3 or 4 stores, and they're Italian based. They even have an Italian beer there, which is also very enjoyable. Upon entering the building and completing the formalities of paying for the ticket, and it is interesting to know that on, I believe, the first Sunday of the month, French museums are free, you are greeted by a beautiful staircase in the same fashion as most French buildings and an ancient aircraft. Thereafter, a Foucault Pendulum, which proves that the Earth is spinning. Followed by a larger aircraft and a more modern one, and a model also of the Statue of Liberty, a gift from France to America. I apologise for saying his name in English, but the French pronunciation is undoable for me. Henry Gregory in 1794 founded the museum. He was of the belief, and he was correct too, that French innovation was not being preserved. And there is good reason to believe this. Everybody knows that the Industrial Revolution started in England, and then later on American production capacity overwhelmed that of England, and most of the prominent scientists had German surnames. But it is also true, if something is to be controlled, it must be first measured. And that is where the French come in a very strong and powerful way. The metric system was proven to be far more accurate than that of the imperial system, with the metre meant to be 1/10,000th of the diameter of the Earth, even though it was later found to be 0.2 of a millimetre short of that target. The standards set by the French in their measuring equipment was amazingly accurate, later adopted by aircraft because the parts made under the imperial system were found not to fit. And in the museum there is a great variety of measuring equipment and instruments which are very important to the world in terms of production and, in fact, the way our modern society come about. One of the many reasons why I wanted to visit this museum was the display of Nicholas Joseph Cogneau's self-propelled vehicle. In fact, I consider it to be the first car ever built. It was built in 1769, beating Carl Benz by more than 100 years, where Carl Benz's vehicle was built in 1885 and had an internal combustion engine. Nicholas Joseph's vehicle was powered by steam and was the beginning of the French love of front-wheel drive. You can see by the way it works with the boiler out front being loaded, it would have been quite useless in turns, but you've got to start somewhere. And I was lucky enough to secure some footage of the vehicle in motion. As the big twin-cylinder Colossus makes its way forward, you cannot help but notice the big and impressive copper boiler out front and hold concerns for the person who may be feeding it as they are in the pathway while doing so. The vehicle's progress may be slow, however it is the beginning of something incredible. The ratchet device which drives the wheels probably gives rise to the term of ratcheting forward. Nicholas's car was never produced in large numbers. I understand that the French army used it in place of horses to transport cannons. The museum has a number of other cars there, some of them driven by propellers, others cut away to show how they work. It is perhaps a shame that the most technically advanced car ever built does not feature at the museum, despite being French. The Citroën Goddess, or better known as the DS, in my opinion and the opinion of others, is the most advanced car yet built. But the story between Joseph's car and the present cars is somewhat of a three-stage process. He opened the door and done it quite well. However, Carl Benz put the finishing touches upon it, and his vehicle is a reflection of what we are all driving today. But there was another problem, the problem of affordability. Henry Ford was the man through the assembly line that made his cars affordable. The people making the cars could in fact afford to buy them. Anyway, let's have a look at the legendary drive of the wife of Carl Benz, Bertha Benz, before getting back to the museum. With the newly designed and built internal combustion engine, Carl Benz fitted it to a carriage. It is hard to believe in a time when women didn't even have the vote that Bertha Benz took it upon herself to promote her husband's invention by undertaking a 209-kilometre drive without his permission and with who knows what level of technical skills on a horseless carriage. One can only imagine the looks upon the people's faces as they saw such a thing going by. Carl Benz and Gottlob Daimler went on to form the Daimler-Benz company, and for those that wonder about the Mercedes star, it stands for Air, Land and Sea. The very name Mercedes comes about because the daughter of a beautiful diplomat caught the eye of Daimler, but in my opinion, Bertha would be a more appropriate name for the company in view of her drive, and also in my view she is better looking than Mercedes. At this point in history, motor vehicles were only an expensive toy for the rich, and probably would have remained so, if not for the efforts of Henry Ford, his Model T and the assembly line. An example of the Model T is featured in the museum, and the marvels achieved by the assembly line and other production methods achieved unbelievable price cuts. The original T Ford in 1908 cost $950. Then in 1927, the cost for a base model ranged between $260 and $290. Can you imagine such a pricing miracle, and are we ever likely to see such a thing ever again? In a country with a famous cycling heritage such as the Tour de France, you would expect there to be a number of bicycles in display, and you will not be disappointed. The French are responsible for a bicycle called the Hobbin horse, one of which that does not feature pedals, whereby the English invented a bicycle called the penny farthing, both of which are on display in the museum. Correctly titled The Machine That Made Everything, the lathe has shaped our world like nothing else. This modern CNC example of a metalworking lathe has a long family history dating all the way back to Egypt. Just like with the motor car, the French were robbed of the title of first. However, Jacques Vaucelson's lathe set the template for all modern metalworking lathes made thereafter, and without his creation, the Industrial Revolution would not have been possible. It is perhaps easy to say there is much that these early lathes could not do, but there is also much these human-powered lathes could do, and they worked like this, with the same concept clearly visible in Egyptian art. Having made a living from and spent many hours on, a lathe has shaped my life, and I can say with authority, whatever you may be doing right now, if you look deeply enough at the mechanics behind it, a lathe is probably involved. Let us feast our eyes on Jacques' work. Originally built to solve a problem of pressing silk, this was the first practical and accurate metal lathe ever built, even featuring a double V, which is a feature of all modern lathes, along with a tool holder and cross slides driven by screws. And this was done in 1751, a full 49 years ahead of the 1800s effort of Henry Morsley's lathe, which could cut screws and probably was more accurate, but did not feature a V-bed. During the Industrial Revolution, the power of man and the power of horses was replaced by steam. However, motors were expensive, and a factory would likely have but one motor with belts flying everywhere to drive every piece of equipment. This was very dangerous and in some ways impractical. French innovation in industrial design solved the problem, connecting an electric motor to power a lathe, and almost all lathes that followed were powered in the same way, along with a range of specialised machines for cutting screws and copying things, all of which are on display in the museum. Also proudly on display is Jacques Vaucelson's programmable cotton loom, something he also wasn't given proper credit for. Those with a machining background could say that these gears are a result of the French showing off, but that would simply be jealousy. The precision involved with them is amazing, along with a range of beautifully made clocks. Some things literally look out of this world, and some things literally are. And here is something that every nerd in the world will instantly recognize. For those who don't, it is a Cray supercomputer, capable of 1.6 billion calculations per second and effectively known as the world's most expensive couch. In its days, it was the bee's knees of computing power, but it has long been eclipsed by modern systems. The collection gives an excellent account of computer history, starting with an abacus working through various means of mechanical computations, to that of magnetic tape and early computer systems. Truly, seeing is believing, and it is even possible to bump into the odd electron microscope and many other optical instruments. All the senses are catered for, with a large amount of audio and video equipment on display, as well as communication equipment. To quote Bill Gates, there can be no innovation without innovations in energy. Before us is a solar-powered Stirling engine, first considered by the early developers of the Stirling engine, with the earliest version being called an Ericsson. And this is how it works. It would not be possible to look at everything in the collection in the great detail that they probably deserve, so I'll walk you through them at speed. Flanked by two of the most beautiful aircraft ever made, being Concorde, a joint venture between Britain and France. It's my hope that one day somebody once again builds a supersonic aircraft, but I'll wager it won't be as beautiful as this one. In any case, all things must end, and this is the end of the video. If you've enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned because there's plenty more to come.